Hi everybody. Today I come with a very peculiar topic, which I'm sure you noticed from the name of this video, right? And it's actually something that I've been meaning to talk for quite a long time, but I guess I've kind of been avoiding because it's just something we don't talk about a lot enough. And well, yesterday I had an incident that kind of promoted me to want to talk about this. So here I am. I'm gonna talk about one of those disgustingness, or at least somewhat disgusting elements of having a chronic illness. And in this case, I'm gonna be talking about our problems with our bladder. Now, having worked in the care industry before, I think you get a bit desensitized to, things like people needing the toilet or being incontinent or things like that quite quickly because it's something quite common actually. We I think we kind of have this idea that people only have problems containing urine or passing urine if they are like little kids or elderly people, when actually the reality of events is that it's a lot more complicated than that. There can be so many different reasons, not just due to age, but illness, injury, whatever. And it's at the end of the day, it's a part of the of human life. Everybody needs the loo. Everybody needs to go to the toilet, and it shouldn't be as like taboo or gross as we make it be, because there are legitimate and clinical and respectful ways of talking about these things that matter. Well, the reason why I want to talk about bladders and this, urinating problems overall today is because not a lot of people know, but this can seriously affect fibromyalgia as well. Now, if you think about it, guys, everything that happens in fibromyalgia has to do with issues in our neurology and in our nerve system. The need to go to the bathroom because you need to pee or to have a little wee or whatever is at the end of the day an impulse, right? It's a message that suddenly your body sends you and says, hey, you need to go. It's a bodily function that matters, and that is actually very important for our well-being, because that's a way in which we expel things that are not necessarily good for us. It's our flushing system, and it's important to have a healthy flushing system because of that. Well, as with everything else that has to do with fibromyalgia, things can malfunction. And in this particular case, people with fibromyalgia often end up developing bladder and potentially bowel problems. I've spoken about that before on the video with IBS, and if you haven't seen that, it's further down the list, so check it out. But not a lot of people understand the issue with the bladder. Now, imagine that you're a perfectly healthy person and you can tell exactly when you need to go to the toilet and when you don't. Sure, sometimes maybe you drank a lot and suddenly it comes on and you just really need to go. It's not so easy for us all the time because, again, sometimes our brain can just malfunction. And we can be perfectly fine one moment and suddenly it's the end of the world, quite literally. The issue is that as well, the area of the lower abdomen and particularly the bladder can be quite sensitive, not just because think about the amount of pressure that area is the pelvis carries the vast majority of our weight, right? Think about your clothes. Where do the vast majority of buttons, zips, straps, whatever end up putting pressure around? Is normally around there, so that can have an impact. Remember, we people with fibromyalgia tend to be a bit oversensitive because of our skin and our, silly brain about these things, so that can cause problems for sure. In the winter, it can also be a serious issue because, well, the cold has a tendency of making us overreactive or oversensitive to these kind of things, even to perfectly healthy people. Have you noticed that if you are for a really long time out there in the cold, you may either not really want to go to the toilet at all, or you may really need to? That's because your bladder is a very sensitive thing. Well, the same happens to us, but 3 times worse because we already have a problem adjusting and recognizing temperature changes, right? So imagine you've been out in the cold, walking for, I don't know, however many hours or even however many minutes. Most clothes aren't that necessarily warm in the area of the pelvis that you may necessarily notice that nerve ending has become particularly sensitive. Well, this can be a serious issue. So if you're out and about this winter and you suffer from fibromyalgia and you've never had this problem before, or you've started experiencing this problem before, honestly, I swear by having a hot water bottle. And I don't mean just a hot water bottle at home. There are some hot water bottles now that you can buy on Amazon or anything that have like a little, I guess, like a little belt with like Velcro. Then you can just keep attached to your front or your back. I mean, it's great for managing pain. Obviously, it will go cold eventually, but it's great for managing pain, like if it was like a patch. And you can also do that, a heat patch in that area. And the same for problems like this. It will help relax those muscles and not be so much in tension. Well, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because yesterday night I had a very severe and aggravating incident of this nature. This kind of stuff had happened to me a few times before, nothing much like a repeating pattern, but a few times. Now, in the past, I've had several problems going to sleep, and as soon as I need to go to the bathroom before I go to sleep, because otherwise I will wake up during the night and I will need to go to the toilet. So I normally take precautions and I don't do that. I don't drink tea past a certain time. You don't drink diuretics. You don't drink a lot of water past a certain time to avoid putting pressure on there. Well, the problem with fibro as well is that because your nerve endings are so overreactive, you don't even had drunk a whole mug or a gallon to actually feel the urge that you really desperately need to do this. It literally could just be a few drops and you would feel as if it's an ocean in that sense. And that's kind of what started happening to me yesterday night. I thought I was perfectly fine. I honestly, I'm not sure where the trigger point may have been because I took precautions in terms of the heat. At home, you can see me, thermal t-shirt, um, dressing gown. I have several layers of blankets right on top of me, a hot water bottle, etc., etc. In the winter, I rarely sleep without a hot water bottle near me. So I really don't know where it came from, but I was trying to fall asleep and I just couldn't. I couldn't really, it wasn't like insomnia. I was like uncomfortable. Something didn't feel right. And just in a couple of minutes, it was like, oh, okay, I need to go. I went to the bathroom, came back. Fine. 15 minutes later, and I'm not exaggerating, I normally sleep with an audiobook. And, after a while, if you know your audiobooks well, you know what section of the book you're in, and you know how long each section is. It was one of those things where I was like, I know this is 15 minutes worth of narrative. I cannot need, or I should not need to go back to the toilet again. It was like that for a whole hour, guys. Every 10 to 15 minutes. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I had not drank anything for hours and hours and hours and hours on end. At the same time, I also started having a very strong sensitivity to noises. I've spoken about sensitivity to noises before in this channel as well, so I'm sure this is no surprising to any of you. But the general issue was that for whatever reason, any car coming through the road, things just sounded off, like a cacophony. But my audiobook sounded perfectly normal, so obviously something wasn't working well anyway, and it was sending me completely rockers because of the noise. And as a result, I don't know if that was creating an anxious response, which was then causing my problem of having to go to the toilet, or if one thing, I don't know what was first, chicken or the egg, but obviously there was some kind of synergy between the two of them. Previously in the past, when I've had that kind of reaction and my bladder has been oversensitive, has normally been nervous reactions and some kind of anxiety. I would be trying to fall asleep and I simply couldn't. Like, when you're so frustrated because you need to sleep that you kind of try to force yourself more and more, but you only end up making the situation worse. That kind of stuff, and therefore my body would go into full-on stress, and it would be like, right, okay, you need to go. I have heard before from counselors and psychologists that sometimes our brain does little tricks like that to try and get us out of the cycle. Like, by making you go to the bathroom, you're not laying in bed. So you have a chance to kind of try to get out of that vicious circle. But to me, this didn't seem like it was trying to break this vicious circle. The vicious circle was the constant need to just do it. So it was honestly really distressing because I didn't understand where it was coming from. I didn't really know how to stop it. And it can be a really hard thing to manage. And for some people, also, it can be very embarrassing. Like, how do you explain to someone, hey, I've needed to go to the bathroom in the last hour every 10 minutes, very abruptly, in urgency? Like, in what kind of normal conversation, right, can you put that across in a way that is easily understood? It is hard, and I think that's one of the reasons why we don't often talk about some of these secondary effects, but that can be very distressing and that can be sincerely problematic. So I actually ended up being able to settle and calm down, and part of the way that happened was by actually applying heat from the hot water bottle to the general um, abdomen area. Although later on during the night I woke up and I had to go to the bathroom once again, but it wasn't the same thing. It was more, a normal thing. But this is a very serious problem that happens to a lot of people, and I think as well, particularly for women, it can be a bit problematic when we have already to deal with problems such as menstruation and whatnot. That area can be extra sensitive, and I know there is a lot of women with fibromyalgia that struggle with this because some of this urgency eventually can become incontinence, not again because of age or because of anything else, but just because it goes. And I promise you that if you're having that urgency, you're in pain or you're fatigued or you can't walk fast to the place where you need to go to the toilet to, it will end up in, well, a not particularly pleasant situation for you or anyone around you. So if you're dealing with this problem, not just with fibromyalgia, but with any other illness, and not just if you're a woman, for men can be even more difficult because let's remember, prostates kind of have an impact in this thing. And if you are not sincerely taking care of your general well-being in that regards, it can also be seriously problematic. If you're struggling with things like this, please really do go and talk to your doctor, because it could be another thing that is just triggering your fibromyalgia. It could be a urinary tract infection, like you could have potential sediment. It could be the principle for a kidney stone or something like that. So if it's a persistent problem, do make sure to get it checked, because it's one of those things that it can really go under the radar. But second of all, again, don't be afraid to talk about it, to find solutions that make you feel more comfortable. When we have problems with chronic illness that make us embarrassed or generally uncomfortable and that seems to not give us any quarter, it makes things worse because the only thing we're constantly experiencing is just stress everywhere. And we all know when you have a chronic illness of any kind, but particularly a neurological condition, it's all gonna affect here. Your neurons are gonna be on overload, and that's exactly what we don't want. So I appreciate it's a hard thing to talk about. I appreciate it's not necessarily pleasant. I appreciate it may be embarrassing. I appreciate all of these things. But honestly, the solutions, at least for things like this, can be kind of easy. It may be one of the very few things that we can solve without, needing ridiculous amounts of medication, surgery, pain management, whatever. And they will genuinely change the way you feel and the way you are comfortable about your body. So if you're suffering with this, whether it's as a temporary situation like it happened to me last night or occasionally, or whether for you is unfortunately a more pressing subject and that comes across in your day-to-day life, you're not alone, first of all. So it's not that you're crazy. There's nothing like crazy weird with you either. It's just part of this neurological perk that we have. So please check it out, speak about these things, and again, if I can ever be of help, you know where I am. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.